Audio Jungle.
Good morning. This is Jacob Johnson and Lee Lowe with BBS International News.
I'm certainly having a good morning. How about yourself, Jacob?
Well, could be better, Lee. My car got broken into and somebody stole my Nikon camera.
My condolences. But on the bright side, that just perfectly led us into our first story. Our field reporter, Holly Henderson, is out and about in downtown Houston.
Hello, Lee and Jacob. This is Harry Henderson in downtown Houston today to report on crime. Although Texas has a relatively low crime rate compared to the rest of the United States, property crime is still a big issue here. What's your impression about crime in Houston in general?
Well, I think that crime has gone down in the last several decades. Generally, Houston, like most major cities, has less murders and rapes and stuff than it did in the 70s.
How do you think it compares to the other cities in America?
I think I feel safer in Houston compared to, like, say, for example, New York. My school, well, where I did graduate school, it was not in New York, but it's close enough, so I was in New York for a few times. I just feel like there are more homeless people that I usually see on busy streets and just make me feel a little bit insecure. And there's always, like, crime reports about, like, say, what is that park? Central Park and, like, those areas just, like, feel overall like a little bit unsafe compared to Houston.
Did you know that Houston is the most, like, the largest human trafficking, the most?
I did know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Well,
I did.
human trafficking
Wow.
city.
Houston is number one
Yeah.
for human trafficking, which is very shocking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I've never even heard about that, like, coming out of Houston. I feel like I hear it more out of other places, but that's crazy. I didn't know that.
And which is funny because I think a lot of people believe that Houston is like one of the like safest places, like in a major city, like compared to like Chicago or New York. I think people would find that Houston is like a safer city just because we're a giant city, but our like
Texas.
downtown isn't as big as like somewhere compared to like Chicago or New York, you know.
Thank you, Holly, for that wonderful information. Although regarding crime, we have just gotten confirmation of a man named Juan Jose Juarez Jimenez on the loose and damaging private property.
That certainly is scary, Lee. Wow, we've just received raw footage of this man. Let's take a look.
Oh my gosh, he's scarred for life. Thank goodness I've never had a dramatic experience like that. That just scarred me.
Wow, this is highly disappointing to see the fine young men of our community commit such heinous crimes. The woman who took this video agreed to join us.
That's right, Jacob. The victim goes by the name of Sally Smitherson, and here she is with us today sharing her tragic story.
Hello, Sally. We understand that you were a victim to this event. Please share your experience.
Yes, I was, and it was scary. All the sand in my eyes disoriented me. And I still haven't gotten my phone back. I can't go to the beach because I have a panic attack. I can't sleep or eat or shower before it reminds me of the beach. This crook has robbed me of my life.
I'm sorry, and thank you for sharing with us today. Back to you in the studio, Lee.
What an atrocity. I hope she can truly become accustomed to sand again.
In other news, we have been given the opportunity to speak with the previous guard in the trafficking rings in Europe, more specifically in the United Kingdom.
That's right, Lee. This man was in the ring for 5 years, overseeing all kinds of atrocities. And he's here with us to share his story today.
Hello, glad to have you here with us today.
I'm glad to be here instead of prison.
So, tell us about what you saw during your time overseeing these.
Well, the money was very good, but I still have a guilty conscience about my actions, of course. But all I really saw were just grown women, standard stuff for doing human trafficking. But over the years, I started seeing more and more heinous and disgusting things, and eventually, one day I saw a child and a teenager being brought in, and that was the final straw. That's where I drew the metaphorical line in the sand, and I just brought the kids in and brought myself in for no police charge at all, of course.
So how do you feel about your past self knowing you contributed to these crimes?
As a grown woman, I don't feel too bad at all. The money was enough to help me ignore my actions against these women.
So what was your role in the trade? You didn't participate in the crimes, did you?
No, of course not. I'm not some degenerate. I was just a guard, keeping the peace, if there was any peace to begin with. But I still wish I just did paperwork.
Well, thank you for joining us. And back to you in the studio, Lee.
And now with the weather report.
Uh-oh, it seems we're having technical problem.
Hello, BBS News. Y'all should really upgrade your mainframe. It was really easy for me to brute force my way onto here, but I digress. The reason I hacked your show today is to bring attention to all these cyber crimes happening in the Western world. No, I'm not talking about cyberbullying. No, I mean real hacking crimes. Like stuff like getting your identity stolen, your bank account emptied, personal attacks on your character, people hacking your Facebook, saying that you like pineapple on your pizza, stuff like that. That kind of stuff. Those are real crimes that are happening in the Western world in terms of technology, of course. And, you know, and I'm not ignoring all the rape, you know. But anyways, I digress once again. And, you know, they call me a hacker, but I am not one of those black hat hackers. I am a white hack, good hacker. Black hat, those are bad ones. They're bad people. I don't like them. Alright? Anyways, BBS, CCN, ABCD, all of those news networks need to bring attention to these crimes happening in the Western world. Anyway, Elite Hackser, out!
Wow, seems like that hacker was doing this for a good purpose.
After all, he does have a point. Well, on to our next subject, drug cartels. The increasing influence of cartels and drug trafficking rings has become a major problem throughout Latin America, stunting the development of the region and even affecting the U.S. due to its border with Mexico.
And here we have today Eric Morales, who is a former attorney during the drug cartels that happened in Latin America.
Hello, Lee. Here I am today with Eric Morales, a former federal prosecutor that worked against drug cartel members, prosecuting them in the USA. How are you doing, Eric?
I'm doing okay. Nice to be here, Alejandro.
Thank you. Nice to be with you. So, do you believe that the current efforts to end drug cartels are effective, or what?
Effective is a word which can be interpreted in several ways. Is it effective in the sense that does it control the problem? To some extent, it's better to do something than to do nothing at all. But at the same time, I do recognize, especially, and I did recognize it while I was working, that you cannot prosecute your way out of the problem. I can tell you stories about how a high-level drug trafficker only became a high-level drug trafficker because the former boss that he was working for was arrested, removed, prosecuted, and thrown in jail. So it created a vacancy at the top. So, and then they move up the chain. There's just too much money and too much incentive for drug traffickers to traffic drugs. So how do you take that away? Well, one is a deterrent of taking away their assets, the deterrent of possibly spending long prison times. But that's not a sufficient deterrent. It's been proven time and time again. So what you're doing basically as a federal prosecutor, it's law enforcement, or just law enforcement across the globe generally when it comes to drugs, is controlling the problem. But there is another approach which I think is gaining force, which is to attack the problem at the root, not just mow the grass as it will, but actually get to the root of the problem, which is, I think it's got two aspects of it, two possible ways to get at the root. Number one is to attack the demand. How do you do that? By having drug treatment, by education, by reducing the demand for illegal drugs. And number two, the second aspect of that would be to attack the illegality of the drugs, to rethink it. You're seeing that in the marijuana area across the United States, where marijuana is becoming legal in some countries, and medicinal marijuana, in some states, and medicinal marijuana is becoming legal in even more states. Every time that a state allows the legal use of marijuana, they in fact take a big part of the easy money away from the illegal traffic of marijuana. There'll always be illegal traffic. There's illegal trafficking in alcohol right now. All you gotta do is go stand outside of 7-Eleven when you're 16 years old and pay somebody to walk in and get you a beer. That's illegal trafficking in alcohol, isn't it? So if you legalize marijuana, there will always be some illegal traffic in marijuana, but you're going to reduce a big part of the incentive. If the United States across the board was to legalize marijuana, I think the Mexican marijuana smugglers into the United States would go out of business. And that's actually, you hear a lot about cocaine, but a lot of the marijuana in the United States comes up from Mexico. So that's. I hope I've answered your question, and that's kind of the view that.
Thank you for spending this time to discuss your previous experiences with us. Back to you, Lee.
Much thanks to Eric Morales for agreeing to do this interview with us. It certainly was an interesting experience to hear.
It truly was, Lee. We definitely have had an interesting day here at the news studio. From pocket sand to a hack on our own studio, we hope we've kept you informed here at BBS International News. Good night to all.